Okay, welcome to part two. Let me show you where we're at. I've made some progress. I rerouted the line cord like I described in the introduction, and I put in these new safety capacitors. The blue discs that you see are the safety capacitors. This capacitor has this little bracket on it that was holding it down to the chassis. I took the screw out of that and moved this out of the way for now, and that's where I used that screw to mount the terminal strip to the chassis. This is going to stay here for the time being because at some point I'm going to have to replace the tone control. It's broken, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, I rerouted everything to this terminal strip and added the safety capacitors and just kind of cleaned things up. Got rid of these old paper tubular line capacitors. They're just a normal capacitor. They're not a safety capacitor like they make now. Back then they would just use a regular capacitor. These are the safety capacitors. They're not too bad. These are kind of the nice disc ones. They're kind of compact and they kind of go in there nicely, and they do a nice job. So that was the first thing I did, and then the second thing I did was replace the electrolytic capacitors. The black ones over here that you see are the replacement for this. Remember, see that in part one. This was the double 8 microfarad. This says 8 plus 8 microfarad, 450 working volts. And it still worked, you know, but it's old. So we replaced it with brand new. These are 10s. They're both 10 microfarads, so these should work great. Put another terminal strip over here and cleaned all of this area up. If I can get that a little bit closer to show you just this section. I just cleaned up all the connections and everything. And you remember in the other video I was talking about, I had all of this stuff. I'm looking for something here, bear with me. And all of this stuff cluttering up this area, including a resistor that was on a long wire running over to this coil. I eliminated that and replaced the wire. This wire wound resistor, I was going to use it. It's original. It tested fine when I put my meter on it. This side is a 10,000 ohm or 10K ohm section. This side is a 7500 or 7.5K ohm section. It's a 2-in-1. It tested fine, but for some reason this side had been disconnected and this blue one had been added. So since it tested fine, I thought I would just go back to it. So I took the blue one out and I reconnected everything and cleaned everything up, and it worked fine. That was this afternoon. I was working on it at lunchtime, and it was working fine. And then this evening when I got home, I was retesting everything, and all of a sudden this side is dead. I get no reading at all on my meter. The 10,000 side is still fine, but the 7,500 side is just gone, and I have no idea why. It's just, I guess it just is defective. So that's apparently why they put this blue ceramic resistor in here. This, you know, it's a wire wound resistor, but it's covered in ceramic material. That must be why they put that in there. This was put in here to replace this dead side. So what I've done is I've cleaned everything up, but I went ahead and put it back in there. So the 10,000K side is still working and still connected up, and this blue one, which is closer to 9,500, it's actually higher than the original, but it's fine. I put it in there and cleaned up all the connections, and the radio is working really well now. In fact, I'm going to show a very short video, 20-25 seconds, of this radio working just as you see it. Just before I started shooting this, I tested it and filmed that, or recorded that, and so you'll see how it sounds now with only this amount of work done. So I'm going to show you that right now.
In March, amid stock market volatility, but households remain upbeat about the labor market conditions. Let's check in with Michael Mish Shedlock. Mish, what do you think about the economy? Toys R Us closing?
I think, George, we've started a decline here from the top. It's going to be severe. It's probably going to play out over a number of years. I'm not looking for a crash, but we could have one. We've talked about this before.
I wanted to talk about this section. At the top of the photo you see the on-off volume control, and coming off of that you see the orange line isolation capacitor. That's running down to a ground lug connected to the antenna coil. There were three other things also connected to that ground lug. The wire to the right of the orange capacitor coming off the volume control, the red, black, green resistor, and the negative leads of the electrolytic capacitors. Since I had to replace most of these components anyway, I decided to clean the area up, and instead of having 4 things connected to that ground lug, now there are only 2, as you will see in the following video. So let's take a look at that, and look out for my goofy kid lurking in the background of the video. I have the garage door open right now to get a little extra light in here, so you might hear some background noise. This is the section I was talking about in the photo, and this is the ground lug I was talking about. It originally had 4 things connected to it. Now it only has 2. One of the things I did was I eliminated the line isolation cap that used to be connected from the switch to this ground, and I moved it over here. Both of the safety caps are over here now. I think you can only see one in this right there. There's both of them. I moved them both over here where the cord comes in, and then just ran a wire from here to the switch and eliminated the one that was on the switch. I also moved the negative leads of the electrolytics from this ground to the center lug, the ground terminal, or the ground lug of the terminal strip that I installed, and just kind of made that a little neater and just cleaned things up a lot. The resistor that was there that you saw in the photo was this one. This red, black, green. That's a 2 meg. I don't know why they put that in there. It's completely the wrong value. It's supposed to be a 45K, and that's what I've installed. I replaced this capacitor while I was doing this area, so this is pretty much done now, except for the 2 wire wounds we talked about earlier. I'm gonna get replacements for those. Anyway, that's where we're at. I'm not going to be showing you every single thing I do. From here, I just wanted to show you this to give you an example of how I'm cleaning things up, trying to make things neater and hopefully safer. And now I'm just going to go ahead and pretty much replace everything that you see in here that has blue tape on it. I think we can move back a little bit. We're done talking about that section. So there is everything. So if it's got blue tape on it, it's going to get replaced. So you can see that's still quite a few things. But the radio is working well. I did all this last night, and I tested it, and it's working better than it was before. So I think we're making steady progress. So I come out here at night and I replace a couple of 3 things, and I'm not in a big hurry. We'll get it done in a week or so. And so I'm going to replace pretty much everything you see here, and then I'll get back and show you that. And then after that, we just have a few things that we have to do. I'm waiting on the rubber parts for this, and I need to do a little bit more cleanup, tighten up some of the tube sockets because some of these tubes are kind of loose in there, and just do a little bit more cleaning. I really want to clean the tuning capacitor well. It works, but it's a little grubby. Need to get a new light bulb for it. This one's burned out. I'm going to put a new antenna wire on it. It's just an old blue cloth covered wire, but it's shot, so I need to replace that. Just little things like that. So we're doing fine. Anyway, I'm going to be carrying on with the the other thing I wanted to mention real quick. I cleaned the volume control. It was really dirty and really noisy when I was running the volume up and down. So I just sprayed it with a little WD-40. I had to take this nut off and take the control out and spray it, because there's a couple of holes in the face of it, and that way the WD-40 was able to get down in there. And I just worked it back and forth 10 or 20 times, and it cleaned it up really well, and now it's working fine. WD-40 works really well for things like this. It works much better than contact cleaner. And then we'll have to replace this tone control. I think I mentioned that once or twice. We'll get to that when it's time to do that. That'll be one of the last things I do. I'll show you what's going to happen there. And then we'll have to repair a small hole in the speaker cone. So just a few odds and ends once I'm done with the major electronic work here. So stay tuned for that.
fan, right? He thought about
Okay,
the Final Four.
We're going to talk about the tone control in this thing. I want to get it replaced as soon as possible because I need to replace it so I can replace a couple of capacitors that are either connected to it or connected to it and then connected to each other. So here's what it sounds like with the tone control on.
One game that's a 1 seed against a 1 seed. Big muscles, and they're about to bat.
And this is what it sounds like with the tone control off.
Cool, CBS? I think the other game is way cooler. Way cooler. You know what's cool, Mark? Cool is being ahead of the curve. Cool is having everybody catch up, right? Cool is the next thing. It's not...
Okay, it's basically not a tone control, it's a treble cutoff. It's a very crude one, and it doesn't work very well because the contacts are broken, and I'm going to show you that now. Okay, so I took the tone control out of the chassis, and one of the contacts actually fell off of it while I was doing that. And you can see the phenolic material here is just, you know, it's trash. So it just has the one capacitor connected to it, and you know, when you swung this back and forth from one contact to another, it would engage that capacitor or not, and it did. Just knocks the treble off the top and kind of muffles the radio. That's what they would call turning it to bass. Not a real tone control. A lot of these old radios use treble cutoffs instead of a real tone control. We're going to put a real tone control in it. I have this one. This is a universal replacement that I ordered online. It is new old stock. It is a 100K ohm taper pot. And it looks like this. And it has this monster long shaft on it because it's a universal replacement and you cut it to fit. So I will measure this one and then I will cut this one to the same length. These are designed, like I said, universal replacement. It has a round shaft, but it actually has a little section there. If I can't keep that in focus, I don't think. It has a little section there you can remove right on this side if you want to make this into a D-shape shaft like these are. I could do that, but I don't have to because the knob, it has a round hole with a set screw, so I can go ahead and leave this round. I just need to cut it to the right length. And you just install it, and you just connect the capacitor to the center lug and ground either of these lugs to the chassis, and then you should actually have a working tone control that'll have a range of tone instead of just a cutoff. So I'm going to cut this to the right length, and then we'll come back. Okay, I cut that to the right length. I left it a little bit long just for safety. When I get it all put together and back in the cabinet and I put the knobs on, that way I can see, you know, how far this knob is going to stick out compared to the other two. And I can file the end of this down a little bit if I need to and get it right. I just want to leave myself a little margin there. So we're going to put that back in and I'll show you what a difference that makes having a real tone control compared to this thing. This is the original capacitor. This one and this one, I think I said earlier, were the only two original capacitors left in here. I want to get this replaced, and I already replaced this one, but this one is just very crudely kind of tack soldered onto this one because I need to replace this, so when I do that, I will clean this up. So I'm going to do all that right now. I'm going to go ahead and install this thing, and we'll see how it sounds. Okay, let's take a look here. I've got the new tone control in place. I replaced the capacitor. That's the one that used to run all the way down through the chassis. I had a unused lug on this terminal strip where I put the power cord, and so I just attached the capacitor to that, and then this new brown wire is going where the old wire went, and I have it running under almost everything just to kind of tuck it up out of the way and get it, you know. And later when I replace this wire and this resistor, I can use this other lug on the other end of that terminal strip, but that's for later. Anyway, so I replaced that, replaced the control, replaced the capacitor. I replaced this capacitor because it was attached also to the same tube socket. And then I reconnected this one that I did the other night. So that's what we have. Let's see how it sounds.
And his thought as to why they were finally sitting down at the table, or his clue, was the fact that Peter Schrager released a new mock draft that had the Giants taking a quarterback at number 2. And Schrager talks, so he's like, like he's not just throwing that out there. Clearly, somebody has led him to believe the Giants are actually going to take a quarterback.
Possibly targeting a quarterback.
Yeah, so somebody with the name of Josh. I don't know if it's Allen or Rosen. We'll find out.
Right, yeah, we'll figure that out later.
Yeah, so Colin's like, well, finally, gosh, you don't understand how to do this, because all they've been saying all along is, we're going to take a running back, we're going to take a running back. He goes, you've got to make people...
There you go. I mean, I'd like to put some music on here, but I'm always worried that YouTube's going to mute the video if I do that. But it definitely has a range of tone now. Let me see real quick. We can try it. Just a little bit of music real quick, but so that's that. Got the tone control installed and it's working, and like I said, we're just making steady progress. Let me see how much time I have left. If I can fit one more thing in here into part 2 here, I'll do it. If not, we'll move on to part 3. Thanks. Okay, real quick, let's see if we can do this. You can see here I got my new wire wound resistors to replace the old ones. You remember the old ones, the old ones. My local shop had them. This is the 10K, and this is a 6.8. I wanted a 7.5, but 6.8 isn't bad. It was, remember the blue one was 9,500, so I'd rather have it be, 700 ohms too low than 2,000 ohms too high. So anyway, they're in there and they're working great. And I rerouted, I put a new wire in here and kind of routed it under everything, over to that coil and kind of got it to where it's not flopping around like this one is. I'm trying to do away with that kind of stuff, with the terminal strips and everything. And I put one short terminal strip in there so I could connect these two together. And it actually puts them in series, but that's exactly the way this one was designed originally back in the 30s. So that's fixed. So we're just about ready to get going on all the rest of it. You can see there's less blue tape than there was last time we looked at it. Hang on. Okay, I don't know why it goes fuzzy like that when I move the camera back. I have to stop it and restart it. But anyway, one of the things I'm going to do just for fun, these 3 capacitors that are wrapped in friction tape, if you look at the schematic, it says that they are 3 separate capacitors in one can. That's actually the term on the schematic, in one can. So what I'm going to do is I took the cardboard tube off the old electrolytics, and I'm going to put the capacitors in this and put them there. And I made a new label for it. I just printed it on orange construction paper, and we'll see if it'll focus on that. It just says, I put multi-section fixed condenser just because that's what it says on the schematic. I thought that was kind of fun to say condenser because that's what they used to call capacitors. And I put the values and the voltage on there. So someday if somebody else is working on this, they'll know what that is. And I made sure to say fixed capacitor so they'll know it's not an electrolytic, just in case they don't have access to a schematic. But they'll be able to open it up and they'll see that it's just the regular yellow, modern capacitors inside of it. But that's just something I'm going to do for fun. I don't have to. I'm just going to do it because I want to. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for part 2. I'm going to finish doing all the rest of this, and then we'll pick it up with part 3. And I think part 3 will probably be it. I think there'll only be 3 parts to this. So, thanks for watching.